Well, it's Friday, guys, and you guys know that this is my favorite call of the day, my favorite call of the week, I should say, because every Friday we get to invite a special guest to our call, to our team. And today is no exception. In fact, I had the privilege of spending the last 2 hours getting to know Jens, and Jens Nielsen is here. Jens, welcome to the call. Welcome to the Leadership and Personal Development call. We are super excited to have you here. As just a quick intro, Jens, I started this call about 6, 7 years ago because one of the things that I recognized, and I think that you'll relate to this, is that as the guy with the good fortune to have the name on the sign, I got invited to go into a lot of really cool rooms with a lot of really smart people who had a lot of really cool things to say. And each time I would go into those rooms, whether it was a 2 day mastermind or a 6 hour group or just a class that I paid for, I'd take away all these awesome nuggets and all these amazing leadership lessons and lessons in personal development. And I'd come back to my team here in central Connecticut and I would seagull shit all over everybody, everything that I learned, and just try to hope that they could all pick it up. And I realized in that process that I was most definitely the bottleneck. I was the guy that was in the way, and that I just needed to get out of the way and bring the leaders and the lessons to the team. And so that's where this call came from. That's where we started it. We've been doing it for years. About a year and a half ago, we said, hey, there's some great content here. We ought to turn this into a podcast. And sure enough, that's what happened. And that's how you found us, which is miraculous and awesome that you reached out. You said, hey, I might have something of value. And there's no question you do. So Jens, thank you very much.
Wow. So glad to be here, Matt. And thanks for
Yeah.
bringing the energy. It's 6:30 where I am in New Mexico, so I need a little energy, a little coffee to get
Well,
going.
that's
But
that's the only thing we do here, man, is energy. At the end of the day, if you don't figure out how to control your energy, you're not going to have a lot of success, right? So, Jens, your story is varied and super interesting. What we're most interested here are the internal, the lessons, the breakthroughs, the stuff that makes your journey a little bit different than anybody else's because you've accomplished a lot in not a very long period of time, candidly, when it comes to your real estate business. On the scale of people who've done what you've done, most people, it takes some decades if they ever get there. And you've done it in under 10 years, if I understand correctly. So I want to just start in the beginning. Number one, let's just call it out. It's not Jens, guys. It's Jens. And it's because, and I'm going to say, I was tempted to say Jans, but is it Jens? Is that right?
you got that right, Matt. Yeah, I'm from Denmark originally, and that's how you say that.
Awesome.
Those four letters,
Awesome.
yeah.
So how does a young Jens from Denmark wind up in Santa Fe, New Mexico with a real estate empire? I mean, this is not a straight line, my friend. I'm imagining that in whatever the Denmark equivalent of elementary school was, they weren't saying someday you could grow up and own a real estate empire in Santa Fe, New Mexico. How does all of this come to be? Like, take us back to young Jens. I imagine wearing a hat and a fuzzy hat and a big coat, chopping ice like from the movie Frozen. So how does it all start? How does it start?
Yeah. Yeah. No aspirations of even being an entrepreneur growing up, right? Growing up in Denmark. And I actually so in my early 20s, I got the opportunity to move to London, England. I was in telecommunication and that was exploding here. This is the early 90s, so there's some young people on the call here. So it's a few days ago, right? Got the opportunity to move to London, England to explore the world, coming from a small country, and that opened my eyes to there's so many opportunities and so many things going on. Then in 1996, so 30 years ago this year, I got the chance to move to the US. Started out in Maryland, so a little bit south of where you guys are, and went to school, went to University of Maryland, got my undergrad, my graduate degree, but stayed in telecommunication and IT for the next 25 years. Literally had a 25-year IT career. Moved around, slowly moved west. So 20 years ago, we moved to Albuquerque, New Mexico, just because we were tired of, the cold winters in Maryland and the hot summers. We wanted a little bit more moderated and more
We,
sun
we
and all
think
that
we
stuff.
don't consider Maryland cold winters, by the way, here in the north. In New England, that's balmy, basically. But gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Still, just wet and gray and stuff like that. So it
Totally.
was time to move west, more space, more sun, just exploring. I love to be in the outdoors and stuff. So we moved to Albuquerque 20 years ago, and we, as me and my wife, out here, still continued the IT career. And for a while, we lived in Durango, Colorado. And that was in my mid 40s is when I decided, like, wait a minute, I don't want to stay in IT for the rest of my career, for another 20, 25 years, right? Something had to change. And everything I looked at looked like another job because, I didn't really look beyond my career. So technology and stuff was like, well, I can be a consultant, I can do this, that, and the other. Everything looked like a job until I discovered, wait a minute, you can buy rental real estate, commercial real estate, and you can actually have other people pay your monthly, their rent, and you can put a property management company in there, and you can then have money while you make money while you sleep, right? That was kind of the eye-opening thing. And I decided that I had a 10-year plan. So 10 years ago, I had a 10-year plan. I was going to buy 4 units or four family every year for 10 years, and that would give me to 40 units, which would probably be equivalent to being able to retire. Well, nothing is that linear, right? That's just kind of my quote unquote naive plan
Well,
10
that's
years
like the
ago.
plan that you make before you know anything, before a global pandemic shows up, before opportunity presents itself to do other things, right? You just sort of start out with this idea and then you start to execute.
Yeah. No, absolutely, right. So I had the dream, I had the idea, listened to podcasts and read books. But the key thing there actually early on was started to get around the people that had done it before.
Mm.
Because Matt, you can listen to 100 podcasts and you get all the information you need, but if you don't take any action, nothing happens, right? So I decided early on I needed to get around the people that were doing it. So I scoured my local network and say, who's doing this? And I found some people that were investing in real estate, and I kind of got around them and started creating my own little mastermind, and then started getting referrals. And you guys are in the referral business too. Started getting referrals to brokers and stuff. And within the first year, we're talking about 10 years ago, we had bought 19 of three buildings, 19 apartment units in Albuquerque, New Mexico. That's kind of where it all started out, right? And very
19,
quickly I saw
19 units within 3 years.
in one year,
In
three
one
build
year. So
three
so you
buildings.
took your 10-year plan and turned it into a 2-year plan. At that rate, you were going to do your 10 years in 2 years. So awesome. I just want to pause you because a couple of things I want to dig into. Number one, again, this is about leadership and personal development. And we often, when it's our journey, and I know I experienced this myself, we often glaze over the big moments because we don't know they're big moments when they're happening. We don't realize that these changes and shifts in our thinking and shifts in the way that we're moving forward are going to have this cascading domino effect. You made a decision to get out of IT and start building a retirement portfolio. The plan wasn't to, I just want to be clear, the plan wasn't quit my job and go all in, jump in head first, right? Like you started somewhere. And then you said that you had this 10-year plan, and your very first thing was you said you discovered this thing called real estate investing, and you said, wow, I want that. I know the book that I read that changed my perspective about real estate ownership. I remember it. I remember where I was. I remember I was sitting on the beach with my wife. I picked it up at Barnes and Noble. I was 26 years old, and I realized working every day is probably not going to be a plan for me. And I got into real estate. What was the turning point for you? You said you discovered it, but how? Did you meet somebody? Did you find somebody? Was there a book? Was there some sort of like light bulb moment that said, dude, you might be able to do this? What happened?
Yeah. It's funny. You mentioned a book, right? It was also a book for me. I had an Audible, prescription subscription for my phone, right? And I needed a new book, and somehow it was Brandon Turner's book, How to Invest in Rental Real Estate. That kind of showed up. You should
Exactly
you
right.
should you should listen to this book. I was like, all right, well, let me get it. I put my headphones in. I took my dogs for a walk for an hour, and I came back, and I told my wife, I was like, this is what we need to do, right? That
That's
was a
it. Right.
defining
Yeah, I
moment.
found gold. I found it. I figured it out. We're going to be rich. I love it. I love it. So Here's the thing that I discover, having led real estate teams for the last 20 years, having been in the business for the last 20 years, having met lots of investors, is a lot of people have that moment, the one that you just discussed. A lot of people have the moment where they go, this is what I'm going to do. And a lot of people, in fact, the vast majority, never get to the point of doing. It's an idea, it simmers, it cooks, they put it on the back burner, they bring it back forward, they ruminate on it, they wait for it to be perfect. You went from idea to 19 units in 12 months. Hang on, hold the phone. Like, what made sense to you to move that fast? And how did you get so quickly through the decision-making process? Because most people here, I think, would love to have 19 units that are cash flowing and making money by this time next year. I guarantee you that if everybody here could have the same deal that you did, they'd all say they would want it. I also guarantee you that I bet 9 out of 10 of them wouldn't take the chance. So how did you reframe your thinking to be the kind of person that said, yes, I'm ready, let's go? How did you do
Yeah,
that?
no, it's a great question, right? Because information without action is just entertainment. So, yeah, the thing was the necessity of making the change was strong enough. And what did I mean by that? First of all, my wife was like, I don't want to live here anymore. We got to move. So I was like, well, I don't want to just move and get another job. So there was a necessity of changing our cash flow, our career, and so on. So that had to change.
There was a life motivation behind it. And
Yeah.
this was when you were in Maryland, or
This was I was in Colorado,
you were already
Colorado.
there and your wife was like, not for me. Colorado,
Yeah.
Durango, Colorado, not my deal. We need to do something different. And you're like, okay, cool. So there's life motivation. And so you're confronted with some deeper meaning and purpose other than just, hey, maybe I just don't want to go check and see why Susie McHugh's email isn't working anymore and, problem solve that stuff, right? I don't want to do the IT thing. So so there's a bigger meaning behind it.
There's necessity. There's deeper necessity, right? If it's a nice to have, most people don't take action, right?
Ooh, I
Because
love that.
that's nice, but I have a good, I'm fine, my job is okay, all this stuff. We're caught in this. The most dangerous place to be is in this comfort zone, right? There's not enough pain to take action, and there's not enough motivation to move towards it, right? So we're stuck there. And I had a
Yeah.
comfortable life. I could have continued to do it. We no kids, so we were totally fine. But there was something else there. I had been dreaming of this entrepreneurial thing. And the other thing was, as I was, in my mid 40s, my mother passed in her early 50s. And I was like, wow, I'm 5 years away from when she passed. What if I don't live out my potential? What if I don't take these chances now? You know, there's no chance, there's no second chance, there's no guarantee we'll be here tomorrow. And if we don't push towards these things, we don't know what is possible, right? So there's
Amen.
some of that
Amen.
as well
So,
going
so
on
this
there.
is, I think, often when I ask questions like this of people, this is usually like you just nailed it. You just crushed this. This is where people get hung up. Everybody wants the opportunity. Not everybody understands why they need it. So there's some part of your life experience, perhaps losing your mother, whatever it was, that brought you into, just succinct clarity at that moment. Like, this is the time to jump. Because again, I don't want to belittle the action that you took. That is not a common thing. People do it, but not now. You put yourself in rooms of people, which probably made it seem easy because you decided to do it, and then you surrounded yourself with people who had done it, and then suddenly you're in an environment where the bar of what you're trying to accomplish is actually something that seems doable because you're not trying to figure it out on your own. So talk us through that next evolution. You get this, we have to do it. I've got to get around people. You mentioned two things again in passing, and I'm bringing you back to this like part of your story because it's the part that is the piece that most people wrestle with. You said, I got into all the meetup groups, I got into all the investor groups. You're talking to a group of really, really high production real estate agents. I mean, this group of people, we outperform the national average on average as a team by 6 times, right? The agents on our team are selling a lot of homes. They're very active. They're out there. We've been to those meetings. We know what they are. I mean, let's be real. Most of those meetings are a lot of amateurs, a lot of fakers, a lot of people pretending that they're going to get into it. A lot of people trying it out. But somehow that still gave you an environment or an audience that you felt like you could perform in. So how did you curate that? Because I can look at this screen right here and I can see 5 people who've told me they've gone to real estate meetups and said it's not worth my time. So how did you figure that out? Where'd you find the people?
Yeah. So two things, right? I get it. Meetups, yeah, there's a lot of tire kickers that does never take any action there. But what I ended up doing, Matt, was I connected with a local guy who actually had done it, right? He owned hundreds of units and so on, right? So he was like, "Hey, I'm an average guy. Here's how you do it. It's not that hard." Blah blah blah. I was like, "Okay, that kind of makes sense." And then he said, "You need to call up this broker down in Albuquerque because he'll help you. He loves to work with new investors and so on. So call this guy up." So I got in touch with the people that had done it, not just, somebody who had the idea, somebody had actually done it. And I'm not afraid of taking action, Matt. When I have when it makes sense, when I can analyze the numbers and it makes sense, I'm usually pretty good at taking action because that's just how I've been throughout my life and my career. So once I had, some social proof that this was possible, my friend Gage said, "Yeah, this is how you do it," and so on, right? Then I was like, okay, I can do this. And then I went to, tour some properties, and very quickly there was some amazing deals. And we're talking 10 years ago, the prices were actually kind of made sense back then to more than some stuff does now, right? I was like, okay, hey, I buy something inexpensive, it's 20 or 30K down. What's the worst thing that can happen, right? So, started small enough, protected my downside, just wanted to see what was possible, kind of put my money where my mouth was, right? And it's, as you start seeing the proof of the action that you're taking, then that encourages you to take more action, right? And so on.
You said something really interesting. You said if it makes sense and you analyze the numbers, then you're not afraid to take action. Um, I think that's another place where we see people get tripped up is mixing up what makes sense with emotion. Again, when you think about amateur investors, I get probably no less than 4 or 5 opportunities presented to me almost weekly. For whether they're from clients or agents on the team or other investors that are so enthusiastic about some opportunity, but when you analyze the numbers, they don't make sense. What does that mean for you? Like, what does make sense mean? What's your buy box? What's your target? Like, how did you look at these properties and say this makes sense? What were
Yeah.
you targeting?
I've always been a cash flow investor, right? Because I wanted to replace some of my income, so the deals had to cash flow. And in some markets, you don't see a lot of appreciation. So, you know, you look at the income, the expenses, and the debt, and you say, is there money left over at the end of the day, right? And that's the bottom line. And if you can make, 6, 8, 10% on the money, then that kind of makes sense where there's some sort of trajectory upwards towards that, right? And we have a deal that we bought in 2018. It's 38 units, and I have a couple of partners on that. And and that one now cash flows 58% a year in the money we have left in it. So
All right.
because we refinanced it. I mean, and that's the thing, right? You also need to have a little bit of patience because it may be a slow roll and so on, right? But you got to get into it and so on, right? So if there is a path to cash flow in, 6 months, a year, maybe 18 months, I'm okay with it. If it's like, oh, I'm going to hold on this for 5 years and hope I can sell it for more money and there's an equity play, no, because
But you're
that's too
okay.
risky.
But what you just said something really interesting. You're okay buying something that doesn't cash flow today, but has a path to cash flow within a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah.
So
If you can see the path, right? I mean, we bought like a year and a half ago, we bought a small warehouse, and since then we've improved the rent roll by like 71%. I mean, we saw it so under market, and we
yeah.
see these leases were expiring. It's like, well, there's a huge opportunity there, right?
Okay.
Now, if you're in, you have to think about value add component to it, right? Is there some sort of value left on the table by the seller? Maybe the units need to be updated, or maybe rents are too low, or whatever that is, right? You have to
Yeah.
kind of look at that. Also, don't be too uh, aggressive and hope for things, right? Because that also gets
Overly
people,
optimistic, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
that
overly
also gets you in
optimistic.
trouble.
All right, you glossed over 38 units with some partners. So let's take it to the next chapter.
Yeah,
You get clear on why you need to do it. and you get comfortable with this idea that there's a bigger purpose behind what's driving you. That leads you to action, and you're prepared to take action. You make sure that when you're taking action, you're taking appropriate action. So you're studying what you're doing, you're clear on what your expectations are, and you make decisions based on that, not how you feel about it. So you didn't let your enthusiasm take over. And then you get 19 units in year one. Let's talk through the first 3 to 4 years. How does 19 units, which I want to presume I couldn't find this answer in a little bit of the research I was doing, but you did those by yourself, those first 19, right?
Yeah,
One thing that you did that I want you to speak to is you didn't buy them where you lived. Talk to us
correct.
about why that was part of your decision making. Why did you not buy them where you lived in Durango, Colorado? There's a couple of things that you talked about.
Yeah, the one reason is so Durango, Colorado is a small mountain town. There isn't a lot of multifamily there. You know, there's single family. Or you could go east, the west, the south, an hour, but everything there was kind of like single family homes and stuff. I was like, wait a minute, I can't get to my goal by buying single family homes, right? And it led to two things. One is I realized I had to scale, so I couldn't just buy the smallest properties. And I also inadvertently bought out of town, leading me to become an investor instead of an owner operator. I think a lot of people get stuck. You know, if you buy the house next door and it's like, well, I'm going to fix the toilet when it leaks and I'm going to do this and I'm going to lease and do everything. That's great because it seems like you're saving money. But what you're doing, you're just doing I mean, not low value, but you're doing tasks that takes you away from the growth,
Yeah.
that takes you away from the investment part of it. Because and
This
that
is
I've seen a
this
lot of
is
like those landlords that never can grow because they have one or two fourplexes and they're just tapped out, right?
Yeah, they become the handyman. Brilliant way to build your own guardrails in. You bought far away so that you would be an investor, not an owner operator, right? When I bought my first multifamily, I was in my mid 20s, and the question that kept getting presented to me, it was a three family in West Hartford, was what do you know about fixing plumbing? Like everybody wanted to know, since I was buying a three family, how I was going to fix stuff that broke. And I always found it to be one of the most curious questions because I would always look right back at them and be like, well, you own a house. How do you fix plumbing? And they're like, I call a plumber. And I'd be like, yeah, no shit. That's what I'm going to do. Like, this isn't that complicated. This isn't, I'm not suddenly strapping on a tool belt to become a real estate investor. But a lot of people think that's actually the path. So I love that you built in your own little roadblock there. And also, you wound up buying, if I remember, you bought in New Mexico, right?
Yeah.
So was that originally part of the plan that eventually you were going to wind up there?
Yeah, so where I lived, I don't know if you're familiar with the geography in the southwest of Colorado and the Four Corners. Denver, the biggest city is 7 hours of driving away, right?
Yeah.
Over big mountains and stuff. Albuquerque is three and a half, the biggest city. But it's not a very well-known city, but it still has 1 million people. Great rental market and so on, right? Because the property prices are they were relatively moderate and so on. So it just made sense to go there. It's the closest town that made sense, that was big enough, diverse economy and so on, right? So that's just kind of where I went. I did look around at other places in Colorado, but it just didn't really connect. So Albuquerque was, and my wife had said, well, yeah, I'll live in Colorado for a while. I want to go back to New Mexico. It's like, yeah, yeah, at some point, obviously, 6 or 7 years later, that point was getting closer. So it started to kind of match up with that, right?
So
And, yeah, I'm
yeah,
sorry,
so you
man.
were you were prepared to go where the deals were.
Yeah,
Is effectively what you're saying was that the deals weren't where you are because we're right now in central Connecticut. We are currently in the lowest the market that has been deemed the lowest post recovery rate for inventory in the nation with the highest rates of appreciation. So the deals are not aplenty here, right? They are not. They were 6 years ago. We all should have been buying way more real estate, right? But we didn't. And so here we are in a market where there's not a lot of inventory, there's not a lot of deals to be had, but there are deals out there, aren't there? Somewhere else. And
yeah.
you were prepared to go find them, which I think is again another sort of testament to your commitment to making this happen. So you now run a whole different kind of business than you did back then.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's
So after, obviously run out of money of our own money in the first year or two, right? And then I was like, wow, should I just save more money and refinance and do my slow plan? Or should I start actually making this a business? Initially, it wasn't like a business. It was an investment side gig. Like, oh, can I make this into an investment? Oh, sorry, a business. And I then that's when when syndications and raising money and all these things really started to take off there in 2018, 2019, 2020. And it's like I started getting around the people, sign up for a coaching program, started getting around the people that were doing the larger stuff. I was like, oh, wait a minute, I can create a team. I can focus on what I'm good at. I can get other team members that are maybe in markets that I don't have access to, and we can put something together that is much larger than the 20 units I can buy myself, right?
okay.
The first step was that 38 unit. I briefly, that was in 2018. That was a joint venture. We got three or four of us together. We bought it for, a steal and a song back then, right? Great. We still have it. It's a great investment. But that really opened my eyes to the fact that a lot of people want to get into real estate, but everybody say, oh, real estate investing, they immediately say, well, buy a house or a four family and something, and then they just get overwhelmed because there's so much going on. It's like, no, we will do the work. We will find a deal. We'll get the debt. We'll do all the work. All you need to do is put your hard-earned money towards this, 50, 100K, and you get a share of all the benefits of it, especially real estate agents with all the depreciation that you guys can use against your active income. It's a great way to manage your tax burden and so
Yeah, I
on.
mean it's actually literally I don't like using the word, but it's stupid not to. It's actually silly to be in the industry and not be taking advantage of real estate investing as a vehicle to massively reduce your tax burden. So you did this 38 unit deal. You said you have some partners. So walk us through, was it your deal? Did somebody bring the deal to you? Like how did that get started? Because now you're known for doing syndication. You're known for doing these types of deals. So tell us how does that start? Because again, I've had people approach me and say, let's put an investor pool together. Let's bring it together. But until you know somebody who's done it, so how did you unravel that ball of yarn and figure it out and then take the
Yeah.
step?
So we started with a joint venture, right? I found so here was the conversation I had, Matt. This was my broker in Albuquerque who had helped me buy, three or four deals. I said, hey, Chuck, if I ever find something bigger, would you like to be partner with me? And he owns like 1,000 units, right? So he was a very experienced investor. Um, so basically, I said, if I find a deal, would you like to partner with me? And he said, yeah, yeah, you bring it to me and we'll look at it, right? So he didn't have to do the work. This 38 unit deal showed up on LoopNet for $1.2 million. And we're talking, 8 years ago. But imagine that out of state owner, it was tired. There was, there was, deferred maintenance that was needed. So we bought it. Sorry. So I was like, okay, we need 600,000 bucks to take this down, right? I think it was. I didn't have that. But I was like, I talked to some of my friends who had expressed interest in real estate investing. Hey, would you like to partner on that? Put 100K in. So I had two people. I can't remember the breakdown. I put some
Yeah.
money in. They put some money in. My partner and his friend put some money in, and we pooled the money together. Now this is a joint venture, so we're all sort of active and so on, whatever, right? But that was the starting point. Then me and Chuck, we so he has a construction company too, so he did all the rehab. I was managing the plans and in communicating with our partners and all this stuff, right? And it just kind of, I mean, we had some setbacks and challenges along the way, but it was a great time we bought it for the right price. We got to refinance, pull a lot of the money back out. But this really showed me that there's an interest in raising money, so investing in real estate, and I actually could influence and persuade people to join with us, right? And then that led to joining some of these programs where I got around a lot, people that were doing bigger stuff, right? So in 2019, we did, 200 units in Georgia, in Atlanta, Georgia. We did some stuff in Pennsylvania, also in Phoenix. So I was like, wait, all over the place. Well, because I got in with a few different people, and this is what's interesting. I could sit still in Colorado. I could sit at my home in Colorado and be part of that by raising money by underwriting and, do a few trips to the properties, but I could do it all remotely because there were people on the ground that did the property management and asset management and so on, right?
All right, I want to point something out. I want to get out of the tactical for a minute and just talk about sort of the personal and the habit. You just said something to me that I perpetually find to be one of the most interesting things about the human experience is that each and every day you woke up and you went to work, but what you figured out was how to work on something that created a bigger yield and a bigger return because everybody here on this call wakes up every day and goes to work. But instead of trying to solve the problem of the tenant whose toilet was overflowing, or instead of trying to solve the problem of the empty unit that was coming up and needed a new lease, you said, actually, I'm going to let someone else solve that problem because the problem I'm going to go solve is the problem of the people that are high net worth individuals who are looking for real estate investments. I'm going to spend my day working, still working, analyzing, looking for deals. And you just rattled off deals in Georgia, deals in Pennsylvania, deals in Phoenix. So at this point, you're building a network and that's your work. That's your, call it lead generation. That's your everyday activity is how do I get out in the market, find the deal, create it. You're still just change. You're still showing up every day and doing something to move the needle on this thing that's important to you. And I think that that's this massive, that's the beauty of your story, Jens, is you went from trading hours for money as an IT guy, and maybe you ran a department, maybe you were the VP, maybe you were the CIO. It doesn't really matter. Whatever the pay was, it was capped at whatever somebody else decided. You went from saying, I'm going to show up and trade hours for money to I'm going to take control of my own destiny and start investing. And I'm going to get 40 units in 10 years. And then you said, well, shit, why do that? Why not get 20 in the first year and just keep doing? And then you just kept moving the needle on what you spent time on, which gradually increased your dollar per hour return such that now your environment, the people you work with 10 years later, how different is your life today as opposed to what it was 10 years ago?
Yeah, and I wanted to step back one thing because all this sounds, well, Jens has something special and does. I'm not special in any stretch. As when I started down this journey, the personal development became paramount, right? I read the Miracle Morning and like I started getting up at 5 a.m. and I would do the work that was necessary to become the person that could do all the things that I'm sharing, right? It didn't just like, come out of nothing, right? There's a lot of work
Well, don't
that
be
came
so
into.
humble because when you say you're not special, just what you said is what makes you special. Because a lot of people have been exposed to the miracle morning, and a lot of people have been exposed to the habits and behaviors of high performance, and a lot of people choose not to take action. And so, yes, that while I appreciate your humility around saying like, well, it's not like I invented this idea of being productive. Sure, none of us did, but you did decide to take action like a productive person.
Yeah.
And that has and why and again why what you've done is so impressive is that I always say to the team, you can change your life in 90 days. No matter where you are today, we're in a business where 90 days from now you can have such a dramatic impact on your life if you do the right things instead of the wrong things and you spend your time disproportionately working on the things that are worthy of being worked on versus the things that aren't. You seem to have distilled down the ability to focus as soon as you see the next thing to put your focus there and continue to build it. So talk to us about your world today. Like
Yeah.
how big is it? How many units do you have? What kind of deals are you working on? I understand you now have a coaching company, so you're teaching this. Like give us an overview in the next 5-6 minutes of what's hot for you right now. What are you
Yeah, yeah,
spending?
yeah. Yeah, my world is different, right? I quit my job in 2020, right? So the pandemic hit, which was a whole other world, a whole other, thing to deal with. But I was able to leave my job. We moved to
I want a
San Diego.
timeout. You quit your job in 2020. Not only, not only, so how long were you double dipping in this world? Like, how long were you working full time? And also, 5 years. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Some of us feel like we don't have enough time to take a shower in the day. You had enough time to go to a full time job and also build a little real estate empire, including syndications in multiple states. So just wanted to point that out. Awesome. All right. So five
Yeah.
years later, you quit your job in 2020. You say enough of this stuff and talk to us. What starts to
Yeah.
happen?
maybe it was 4 years, but anyway, yeah. Moved here to Santa Fe, right? Bought a dream. Actually, you guys love that. Bought a foreclosure, fixed that up, and got this, multi-million dollar home without having to put multi-million dollars into it and all this stuff, right? So that was a huge. So this is another one of taking action and taking the risk of something that was unknown, right? But what's my world look like now? So I mean, we scaled tremendously in 2020, 2021, 2022. At some point, if I counted all the units up that we owned with different partnership, I think it was 25 to 2,700 units throughout. Now, my percentage was very small and stuff like that, right? But I had involvement in all these deals. It ended up being, it's been 35 commercial investment deals that we've done since in the last 10 years, right? Not one a year, 35 deals. Anything from the fourplex to the 230 some units portfolio. Again, now then the market shifted, right? In 2022, 3, when the interest rates start going up, that really made it hard to invest in apartments and stuff because suddenly they couldn't cash flow the new debt load and stuff like that. So for a little while there, we were like, man, what do we do now, right? How do we shift? So 3 years ago, we started moving into a different asset class, being light industrial, small warehouses, flex space, stuff like that. Not self storage, but just in warehousing because that actually makes in our market makes more sense now. So we've sold a lot of deals. We have shifted the attention towards other things, right? And I don't have the same pain and urgency I had 10 years ago about what I need to do because I have these deals, they're cash flowing, money is coming in and so on, right? So now I just do deals that and also it's difficult. It's different. It's more difficult to raise money now because money has been lost in real estate too. So the market has shifted a lot. Luckily, I got into a time when it made sense and have then scaled down and still do some deals, but not nearly to the scale we did um, that year several years ago. And the good thing is, I never had employees. I was always myself with partners. So I only have to make sure I can take care of myself and that deal. I don't have to pay other people. So the pressure on me is lower than if I had a big firm with a bunch of employees and stuff like that, right? So that
Mhm.
and that's I never wanted, man, I never wanted to create a huge company with a bunch of people because I wanted freedom. I wanted after we're done here, I'm gonna go mountain biking for 2 hours with my friends, right? Then
Awesome.
I have some other meetings today, meeting some people. I set up my day as I want, right? So that's the kind of freedom I wanted. I worked my ass off, but I still also want that freedom there. So
Well,
that's
you again, this is a superpower, Jens, that you need to, acknowledge like your capacity to number one, understand what you want, and then distill it down to in order to get what I want, what should I spend my time on and what should I not spend my time on? I'm certain that in all the units that you have, somebody's sink is backed up today. Somebody didn't pay their rent this month. I'm certain of it because
yeah.
I've owned a bunch of rental property. I'm sure that there are those problems. Somewhere along the line, you've created enough infrastructure where enough people know what it is that they're supposed to do in order for them to achieve the goal that they want so that you don't have to solve the problem of the person who's supposed to be solving the problem. Like you are not being woken up in the middle of the night with a problem that's not really your problem. You figured out how to do the right things, not the wrong things. On the team, we call that knowing the difference between going toward the end zone or running sideline to sideline. Because in football, you get no points, you get no yards, you get no benefit from running as fast as you can from one sideline of the field to the other. And even if you do it 100 times during the game, you'll still lose the game because there's no value to going sideline to sideline. But you will still be tired. You'll still feel exhausted. You'll still be worn out and burnt out and feel like you left it all on the field. You just left it on the field in the wrong way. So it's really brilliant. I love that you're going to be going mountain biking and talk to us about your process around that decision making, like the decision making of okay, you have this world now, you've created it, and it serves you. And like you said, you don't have the hunger and the burning desire. Oh my God, I got to hurry up and do it. How do you know when a deal is right now? How do you know?
Yeah. Again, it comes back to the numbers, right? You look at the income, the expenses, and the debt, and does it make sense, right? That never changes. I'm gotten more conservative because there was a while there where we were projecting significant rent growth and stuff like that. It's like, no, that may not happen, right? So we tamper our rent growth expectation. We may be more conservative on our expenses because insurance and taxes and all that stuff has really increased too, right? So it's a different world out there to do that. But again, the numbers tell us the story, right? It's not
Mhm.
an emotional decision. It's basically plug the numbers in. Does it make sense? You have to have some level of optimism because otherwise you can make no deals will work for you, right? But that's the same thing, right? We're just analyzing numbers and looking at that, right? And I'm also letting more other people take more risk now. So I'll just lend out my money and say, hey, you want to go and flip a home here? Here's some money. You do the work and pay me off
I
once
know
you're
I
done
love
and
I
stuff
love
like
that.
that.
I was actually going to ask you about the money part because that's often the question that people come to me with is, number one, there's lending, there's lending um, assets out there, tools like DSCR loans, like there's a lot of ways to get into property. What do you find is the best way to preserve the integrity of a deal? Is it using institutional lending like a DSCR loan? Is it, like you talked about raising 600,000 to go? How did you guys finance that deal? Did you go to a bank? Was it, through, are you guys playing in the private equity pond now? Like where are you finding capital for these deals?
Yeah, so I mean, it's always you always have a partner as a lender partner, right? Locally, we tend to use local banks that we have good relationships with,
I like
especially
that.
when it's industrial and stuff like that. If it's larger deals, we'll go and do agency debt like Freddie or Fannie, right? Bigger deals. I like that because it's non-recourse. What I think we really have to what I like now is low leverage, don't get us, maybe you can get 80%, but it's probably safer to get 65, right?
Yeah, sure.
Low leverage, long-term debt, fixed rate, and then the equity comes from private investors still, right? I mean, we've never gone to the family office level and buying, class A stuff, right? Always operated in that class B space with private individuals and so on. Because again, we can manage that better in that regards, right?
I love it. All right, one last question, and then we're going to flip it for some questions from the group.
Yeah,
If you could go back to early days, Jens, early getting started, and you had the opportunity to give yourself a piece of advice,
yeah.
and let's talk. This is, right as you're leaving IT, you just read the book. You say to your wife, "This is it. This is the future." What piece of advice would you give yourself? What would you tell yourself getting started?
Yeah, I think the piece of advice there is just trust your ability to figure it out as the problems come up, right? We are
Mhm.
very resourceful there. And maybe before we go to the questions, I definitely want to answer that. You mentioned so talking a little bit about what I do in addition to the real estate investing because as I quit my job, I was like, okay, real estate doesn't take all day, right? What else do I do? And at that time, I realized I had acquired a lot of like knowledge around how do we actually do deals, also around how to shift people's mindsets so they start taking action, right? Helping them moving towards from idea to taking action, to staying on the path, and so on, right? And I had a coach that helped me. I didn't do this. I had actually a coach that I hired to help me through a lot of this decision making and thinking and so on, right? So I became a high performance coach also in 2020, later in 2020, and that really has helped me. So, I do real estate investing, but I also help individuals that either want to invest in real estate or just want to improve their life in many ways. So that has been my other passion these last 5 or 6 years, right? And I actually do work with a lot of real estate agents too, that are just burning themselves out because they work 7 days a week. They're always on call and stuff like that, right? Helping them get out of that rat race and start really focusing on what's really important with them and so on, right? So
Yeah, I
that's
mean,
my other.
this is the craziest business that you could possibly imagine, especially if you're coaching agents. You recognize like you do have an unlimited opportunity available to you if you take action in the right places versus the wrong ones. But it also means you may actually be working 7 days a week, which is no version of life that anybody wants. Nobody says, boy, I hope I get to work 80 to 100 hours a week and never sleep and be constantly on call and spend no time with my kids and my wife. So how do we find out more information about your coaching, Jens?
Yeah, the best place is just go to my personal website. It's just Jens, you can see it on my screen, jensnielsen.us, right? Go there. And there's a link, my phone number, my email. There's a link to just schedule a quick 20-minute call there to check in with me. And yeah, especially so that's, I love to talk to people, investing, coaching, mentoring, whatever the need is.
Love it. Love it. So jensnielsen.us, not .denmark, .us.
No.
Okay, got it. And then I did see a question in the chat. While I'm gonna ask you guys if you've got a question for Jens, a comment, any thoughts at all, go ahead and throw your hand up and let's ask them. There was one question in the chat here from let's see. Um, from Alyssa, have you had any deals that didn't go as you thought it would? Any bad experience with investing that you had to learn from?
If I said no, I'd be lying. No, yes, there has been some there has been some bad deals, right? Especially what happened was there was in 2022 there was a lot of like short-term debt that was possible you could get, like kind of bridge
Mhm.
debt and stuff like that. Maturity 3 years later, 2025, interest rates are so much higher, right? So we had to sell a deal last year at below. We were able to cover the debt, but there was equity was lost there, right? I
Yeah.
mean, this is we couldn't. The market has shifted, and there's no more money, and that is the risk we're taking there. That has taught me about a bunch of really painful lessons there about what kind of deals I do going forward.
Well, it's partly why the value of having a broad base, right? Like there's some intelligence to jumping into 19 units from the get-go versus trying to do one, two, or three, right? Like you spread your risk out significantly the broader you can go. So
Yeah.
thank you for that, Jens. Yeah, Bennett, what are you thinking?
Yeah, so this has been very enjoyable to listen to. I've got a couple comments. One is just more about the self-improvement aspect of it. And you said, you're nothing special. What a lot of people say that, successful people, and I think what they mean is I'm not like a genius on the mental scale. I'm not a Mensa member. But what's special is, and it goes back to the Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours rule, which is you just have to be smart enough. So you do have to have some level of intelligence, but then you have to put the work in.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a baseline. So what makes you special is that you put the work in, and that you committed to self-improvement and self-mastery, which is why I love real estate because it's like in order to be successful in real estate or sales, you have to kind of work on yourself as well. It's like it's a requirement, goes hand in hand. So I think that's when I see people like you, and you're very modest, obviously, but I do think that that's really what it is you took action. And then a micro thing about investing itself, you mentioned that you're a cash flow investor. And I've met with hundreds of wannabe investors, and they all say the same thing. They want cash flow. But what they don't want to do is take what you said, the risk, which is to see the path. So they want to, the day they buy it, they want $1,000 in positive cash flow.
Right.
And if it was that easy, of course, everybody would do it, or the person wouldn't be selling in the first place. So it's you have to say, well, yeah, if I can raise the rent $200 in the next 6 months. So it's everybody wants cash flow, and I think you being a cash flow investor, but it doesn't mean that the day you buy it, it's cash flow. You have to have some plan to, and I love how you said that. If you can see the path to cash flow, but it might take 6 months or a year, but as long as you can see that, then on the back end you'll get the cash flow. But to get it on day one is just that's what everybody wants. It's very hard to get.
Absolutely. Yeah. You got it,
Yeah.
Bennett. No, thank you. I appreciate that. Right. And it is a daily routine to stay motivated and active. I mean, there's morning journaling and meditation and all these different things, right? That just becomes a habit and so on, right? Because now, just like you guys, I got to go out and sell sell my investments and my coaching every single day. And if I don't do the work, I don't have any business, you know. So it's
I think there's another piece that I just want to build on with what Bennett just said, what you reiterated there, Jens, which is that it's all putting the work in and knowing what to do is really the easy part. I mean, there is not a single person on this call that doesn't know what to do or doesn't have the capacity to do it. But you said something so important, Jens, and if it was the highlight, if it was the headline for this call, it would be, but why are you doing it? And I really believe that's the main hangup that most people get is they can't quite figure out the purpose behind taking action versus not. And so they sit inside of comfort or mediocrity or even sometimes discomfort, even extraordinary discomfort, but the discomfort of knowing the discomfort keeps them anchored in not taking action versus taking the step. And there's this brilliant mix, which is what this entire call is always about, is about how do you move from where you are to where you want to be by making the decision and then getting into action. So, Jens, this has been incredible, awesome morning. You made a difference this morning. It's something that you should be really proud of. You get to start your day at what time is it out there? 6:30, 7:30?
it's 7:30 now,
Get
but
to
yeah.
start. You can go enjoy your mountain bike ride knowing that a bunch of people on the East Coast and the Northeast woke up today and had their lives impacted by the effort and energy that you brought to us. So thank you so much. How can we support you? Where can we show up? Is there some social media that you'd like us to follow? We're going to be kicking out a bunch of reels out of this. How can we support you? How can we create momentum for you? Is there a person you want to meet that maybe we know that we can introduce you to? What's important to you, Jens, that we can help you with?
Uh, I write a weekly newsletter about different mindset topics, you know. So if you send me an email, I'll put you on the newsletter, right? And if anybody feels a little stuck in their career, a little bit like I know there's another level, but how do I get there? Let's have a talk, right? That's what I'm working with. I mean, I'm working with these guys from Sotheby here in Santa Fe, and these guys are high performing real estate agents. And what has happened, they created a team and they were just all over each other and didn't know what to do. And now they actually have a team because I've been working with them since the beginning of the year, and they don't have to work every weekend, and they really have a fantastic, and these guys sell like $150 million worth of real estate between the three of them a year, right? But they actually also have a life on the side, right? So
Fantastic.
um, so
Fantastic.
yeah, if you want, that's kind of it, you know. Anybody you think could use my services, send them my
Are
way.
you on Instagram? Are you on
Yes.
YouTube? Yeah, where do we find you on Instagram and YouTube?
Let me put the link in the window here.
Awesome. Awesome. Jens, thank you so much. While you put that in there, I'm gonna send us all off. Guys, it's been an awesome day to start your day, an awesome way to get going. It is going to be a beautiful day today. I guarantee it. You're going to see the sun's out, it's blue sky. It's a great day to get out and do the thing that you're supposed to do. We like to call that sign something, sell something, or set an appointment. You know that's what you need to do, right, Ed Ford? Ed Ford knows. He's like, yes, I know. Sign something, sell something, or set an appointment. Dan Raposo's going to do it. He told me yesterday he was going to sign a contract today. I'm sure he's getting a new listing today. Ask me how I know, because Dan told me he's going to, and he's a guy that does what he says he's going to do. Guys, make it an awesome day. Love and appreciate y'all. Jens, thank you very much. Appreciate you for being here. Take care, everybody. Enjoy your Friday. Have a great weekend. Get your open houses in. Get them done. See you later.
Thank you.